Welcome to Bamford Rose and another question of the week. This week's question of the week is, hey, I need to book my car in for some work, a service, a repair, an upgrade maybe, but you're finding it difficult to book in because everywhere is booked out. And oh yes, it is everywhere super busy at the moment. So let's just delve into the world of Aston and see why that is. So if we consider the franchise dealer network, we've got 17 of them. Within the M25 area, we've got Hatfield and Brentwood. Then we've got Walton-on-Thames and Mayfair and A40 London Approach. The southeast region outside of the M25, you've got Sevenoaks, Reading and works at Newport Pagnell. Moving away from the southeast and the M25, you've got Chichester, Reading, Cheltenham, Birmingham, Nottingham, Bristol, and then moving further up north, you've got Wilmslow, Leeds, Newcastle, and finally Edinburgh, furthest north. The independent network is a bit more difficult to classify. Who do you classify as independents for the Gaydon era or the modern era Aston, from DB7, Vanquish up to Mercedes era technology? There are very few 100% brand dedicated independent Aston Martin specialists. And do you include sales outlets that predominantly prep their own sales cars? Because it's quite tough to stretch that basic prepping of a car to being a proper repair and service workshop. And do you include motorsport outlets who will struggle to do a wheel refurbishment, a wing mirror store, powder coat exchange, all within a week? You drop it off on Monday, you collect it on Friday. And they're just not geared up for that. Also, do you include predominantly heritage garages which are trying to get into the modern era? Now, whilst some of those garages do phenomenal work on restorations of older cars, really whether they're any good on the modern era depends on whether they've got a laptop and they can plug it in and they know how to use it. So based on that criteria in the independent world, you've got three definites. You've got us, you've got AML Performance, and you've got Peter Martin all the way up there in Glasgow. The likes of the heritage world that will stretch to the modern era are going to be people like Nicholas Mee, the Aston Workshop up in County Durham. Now, there will be some good independents that are fine on DB7 and Vanquish. You know, these could be people like Ricky Khan and Pugsley and Lewis. So stretching the limits of who you are going to count, then with the 17 in the franchise network, you're certainly going to end up at no more than a figure of 30 garages for the modern era Aston Martin. Now, if your car just needed regular routine service, maybe some brakes, maybe some tyres, then although the independent world is going to do a better job, the franchise dealer network is open to that work. But if your car is a little bit older and you start to need subframe restoration, powder coated mirror stalks, some brake line renewal, swapping out radiator, changing clutches, that's all going to get pretty expensive in the franchise network. And jobs like subframe restoration, well, they won't really touch that. What they'll want to do is box fit, which is take the part off the car and go to the shelf, fit the new part, and don't repair a part that comes off the car, because that's not really in their business model. The cars that are going to need that extra work doing on, so this is work extra than a service, are going to be typically 10-year-old cars or older. So if we look at DB7, Vanquish, V8 Vantage, DB9, V12 Vantage, DBS, Virage, you get to about 2012 covering those models. That is, give or take, about 10,000 cars, which are more likely to be outside of the franchise network. And now they're going to want to cross over into the independent network. And you find that independent network is served by a core group of, say, 3 to 7 garages, leading up to a maximum of about 10. Quick basic bit of maths, and if it was split equal for geographic location, then that's about 10,000 cars trying to book into 10 workshops, meaning 1,000 cars per year for each workshop. If you take something like a 48-week working year, then you're going to calculate something like 20 cars trying to book in per week. 20 cars booking in per week for service and some repairs with an average workshop resource availability of, say, 4 ramps, 6 blokes, something like that, is absolutely impossible to deliver. And this is one of the biggest problems in the Aston Martin world at this moment. Available garages to take your car to. A garage is going to be much like a restaurant, where if they've sold their tables, then there's no more tables to sell, and it's just not possible to book in. And that's a real problem. I try and manage that workflow. So if we're fully booked out and there's a breakdown that's happened, someone is distressed at the side of the road, needs to get their car recovered to you, but you say, oh, hey, sorry, I can't book you in for 2 months, then that's a bit of a problem. An independent garage really needs to be flexible and open to emergency situations like that. If a garage was just doing one particular type of work all the time, that's no good either. So, if we were just doing upgrades all the time, which we are stacked out for, and we've got a long lead time for upgrades, and we weren't open to servicing, then that's not good either. So it's very, very difficult to manage a balance and maintain flow and keep all of those needs satisfied all at once. To the backdrop of there being far too many cars for the number of garages that are out there. But we just spoke about 10,000 cars, because that's up to about 10-year-old cars in this country wanting to book into the independent network. But really, the dealer network is struggling a bit at the moment. Now, total Aston Martins in the UK, from DB7 all the way up to and including the Mercedes era technology, is now a slither over 20,000 cars. There are some dealers that are good, I would say, from chatting to customers and getting a general feel for the market. Then HWM, Walton-on-Thames, is very good. Bristol is very good. And obviously Work Service is Work Service. The dealer network is run by big PLCs, so this is your Stratstones or Granges of the world. Now, they suffer with quite bad levels of turnover of staff. This is where a technician in that franchise world isn't going to have any brand loyalty, and if the terms and conditions are better at a BMW garage or a VW garage, then they're going to go there. If they get a better pension package, all that sort of stuff. If they hook up with a new partner on the other side of the country, very, very easy to swap garages, swap where you live, and up sticks and move. Another reason a PLC will suffer a big turnover of staff is because, especially these Astons, they can be quite frustrating, infuriating sometimes to work on. Maybe the electronic diagnostic system isn't as robust as what a BMW or VW group system would be, where you plug in and it quite literally does everything for you and tells you what's wrong, and you don't really need to think too much. And you're going to have to use it as a tool to get the information that you want to figure out what's wrong. Now, that's great for those technicians that want to rise to that challenge, because they like being challenged at work and they put their problem solving skills to use. But technicians that just want an easy ride, well, it's a lot easier to go and work for the BMW dealer. You don't have all the stress of the problems that come on working with Astons. What's going on to the backdrop of that quite large turnover of staff is that when new staff come online, they're sent on the training courses. They've got no idea how to work on these cars, but they're only sent on the training courses for the new cars. DBX, DB11, new V8, different engine management system and architecture, different diagnostic kit to the previous generation Gaydon cars. And because it's more important to send their staff on the training courses for the newer cars, then they don't get sent on the training courses for the older cars. So how is someone going to fix a quirky problem on a DB9, on a diagnostic system that doesn't tell you the answer, and solve that problem without having years and years of experience? Most car-savvy petrolhead people realise this, and they realise that the dealer network is not the place for them, and the car is better looked after in the independent world. What that does is mean the very real situation of that figure of 10,000 cars trying to book into the independent world is actually inaccurate, because it's a lot more than that. It's certainly not going to be 20,000 cars trying to book into the independent world, but it's certainly going to be somewhere in the middle. Now, if you consider that 15,000 cars are trying to book into about a maximum of 10 or 15 independents, depends who you count, then this is a real problem. The reason for the lack of independent specialists is because the barrier to entry is kit and knowledge and experience, and all of those are almost impossible to come by. To get the experience and knowledge, you're going to have been a technician in the workshop, and that would have needed to have been about 15 years ago. So if they were qualified at the time they started that journey, they're going to have been about 25. Means they're going to be at least 40 today. Now, what 40-year-old is going to want to come out of paid employment where you just turn up to work for someone else, no hassles, and kick that all to one side and start up in business on their own and have the worries of a lifetime? So it's unlikely that a new business is going to pop up staffed by someone with experience. So for that reason, over the last 5 or so years, even 10 years, the independent players that are in the game today, well, they were there years ago. There haven't been any new ones really. There's another problem looming in the model range, which is those new Mercedes era cars are on a different laptop system than the previous generation cars. That laptop system is an online system, and the factory have restricted sale of that, and pretty much no one outside the dealer network has that equipment. Those cars came out in about 2017 and were mostly sold with 5-year service packages. So it's not going to be until now or next year that those cars try and find their way into the independent network. I say try because the independent network isn't going to have the kit to work on those cars. Now, it's an Aston and it looks fairly familiar. So to change the oil, air filters, brake fluid, give it a service, reset the service indicator, even with some generic engine management system equipment, is all perfectly okay. But what happens if something goes wrong? What happens, for instance, if you had the door card off, you were doing something to cure a rattle, maybe some modules were disconnected, someone accidentally turns the ignition on, and there's some airbag fault code that needs a laptop to turn it off. Now, for sure, it's an architecture Bosch system and some clever kit out there, maybe a snap-on kit or something like that, is going to be able to talk to that car, being fooled that it's talking to a Mercedes, maybe you can get yourself around it. But as a garage owner, I don't want to conduct business like that. I want to be 100% certain I can achieve and fix or do anything, any eventuality that happens with the car inside my workshop. I'm not going to leave anything to chance, because I don't want that uncomfortable discussion of a problem which we can't resolve, and ultimately the independent would have to take the car to a franchise dealer to solve a problem. For that reason, probably going to find not many independent Aston specialists except the Mercedes era cars, meaning that those cars are locked into the franchise dealer network. Now, that's absolutely no problem to me because of the number of cars we've spoken about earlier trying to book themselves into the low number of workshops. And for us, we specialize in DB7 Vanquish and the Gen 1 Gaydon era car because these were the cars that we were used to in design and development. I'm not used to the Mercedes era cars in design and development, and we can't work on them with the confidence that we can work on these cars. I don't want my sales message of that fact to be diluted, so I'm really not too concerned that we can't cater for the Mercedes era Astons. What I do feel for are the customers that own them, that think that they will go into the independent network, find out that they have no choice, go to the franchise network, and all of a sudden their cost of maintenance is much, much more than what they bargained for. Now, the factory did have a similar problem in the mid-2000s and solved this by creating the Heritage dealer and a service centre which were separate to a fully fledged franchise dealer. An approved service centre couldn't sell cars, but they could service cars with an approved stamp. A heritage dealer could service and sell DB7 and Vanquish and prior to that with an approved stamp, but could not service modern era Gaydon cars with an approved stamp. As times got hard when the 2008 economic crisis hit, then fully fledged franchise dealers complained about the easier life that the service centre and the heritage world had, because they didn't have the undertaking of what it cost to maintain and run a fully fledged franchise dealer. Over the years, probably through to natural wastage, those garages ceased being heritage and specialist service centres, to the point today when there's practically none left. Now, a factory set up that heritage garage for DB7 and Vanquish when, in terms of volume of cars on the road in the UK, there's hardly any. Back then, when you could have booked into a franchise dealer and any number of heritage dealers, then there would have been more garages for you to choose from than there are today. It wouldn't have been the reversal where there are no garages to choose from and lots of cars wanting to book in. So it's quite mad, really, isn't it, that some of the big PLCs or the factory themselves don't realise this and open up some heritage franchise again. That's not a sales pitch, it's not for me. I will always stay fully independent. But what the Aston world does need are a few more garages to take up the slack, because the volume of cars that are trying to book into so few garages is quite uncomfortable to try and cater for. Chatting with different owners that come in here, you realise that that's a similar story for McLaren, Bentley, Lotus, and it only seems to be the Porsche world which is properly catered for with independent specialists. So in this week's question of the week, I haven't got an answer. I've just got an analysis of the Aston situation in the UK. For the era of car that we're talking about at the time, Aston sales were 30% UK, 30% USA, 30% Germany, 10% rest of world. So it would be really interesting in the comments section to understand what the Aston situation for booking in at a garage is in Germany and in the United States. I hope you've enjoyed that overview of the Aston Martin garage world, and we look forward to seeing you on the next question of the week.